Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I'm Shelley Pruitt, and my partners in paranormal with me here are Mr. Blake Smith and Mr. Ryan Roberts. And of course, got Brittany. She is back there pushing the buttons and answering all your comments. And I'm so excited because I've got a date with my two favorite guys tonight and my best girl crush right here on the podcast.
And tonight we're talking about a sneaky snake.
A sneaky snake indeed. We are talking about Medusa. And I know everybody's heard about Medusa. Yes?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. She's a sneaky snake.
She is.
That's like, sorry, y'all. I've been saying that all night on the pre-broadcast.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll go into the post-broadcast. It's all good. Just bear with me.
Yes. Yes. So, any thoughts about Medusa before we jump into this? I figured this was like the perfect Valentine's Day one because it's not a love story. It's a story of vengeance and curses and all the things you want to do when you break up with that special someone.
I mean, I know classically Medusa is portrayed as a monster, and if you look at her in the eyes, you turn straight to stone. That's the only thing. And doesn't she live in a labyrinth as well?
No.
No, you're thinking
No
of somebody
labyrinth.
else.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
What? Our human Rolodex got a fact wrong? I'm
I
appalled.
believe you are talking about
That's the question.
minotaurs or centaurs that live
Yeah,
in mazes.
The
and
centaur
labyrinths.
lives in a maze, yeah.
Yes.
No, I just
But-
know the basic of her story that, you know, as everybody does, she was a hideous monster with snake as hair. Snakes
we'll roll
as
with
hair. Yeah, we're going to roll with that. Who turned people to stone. That's just
Hey,
all
man.
that I know.
He turned my hair into snakes.
Fuck off,
Obviously, we
Ryan.
had a little too much fun on the pre-broadcast. But yes, she actually inspires the saying, "If looks could kill."
Oh, okay.
So let's go ahead and let's jump into Medusa. How about it, guys?
Let's do
talk about her. So just be aware before we get started that these stories may not be the exact matches to the ones that you have heard in the past.
Mhm.
The story, depending on who you read, it changes based on the storyteller and if he or she is Greek or if they're Roman. And of course, you know, they all want to show off their storytelling abilities. So some have different things in them than others do. And I'm going to attempt to tell you the most complete and agreed upon Greco-Roman version of these
Okay.
stories. So I've
Okay.
mashed them together to find what I think is probably the most accurate of the story of Medusa.
Before you get going, though, Shelley, I do have to say you look very nice tonight.
Thank you very much. I dressed
Oh.
up just for you.
I'm a little pissed that you didn't give me the Roman goddess memo so I could, too, have locks of luscious hair.
I figured
and a
since we
halter
were talking
top.
about the Greeks that I should look the part.
I was going to show up in a toga.
Again, nobody wants to see your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle sheets, Ryan. We just don't. So
Hey, I'll have you know, they're Stone Cold Steve Austin sheets. Get it right.
On with your fabulous story, Shelley.
on with my fabulous story. So here we go. So a long time ago, when the gods and the goddesses ruled the heavens and the earth, there was a story told of a terrible monster, a monster so hideous that one look from her could turn men into stone. Her blood was so deadly that it could kill, and anyone that dared to seek her never returned from her lair. And her name was Medusa. But she wasn't always a monster. Now, the story begins with the ruler of the gods, Zeus. So Zeus was the sixth child of the Titan god Cronus and Rhea. And Zeus's father worried that his children would become more powerful than he was. So he ate the first 5 of them, like any good father would do. But the children, being immortal gods, they didn't die. But they were trapped inside of their father's stomach and they couldn't get out. Well, when Rhea had her 6th child, Zeus, fearing for his safety, she hid him away from Cronus in the forest. And the forest nymphs, known to be lustful creatures, they raised Zeus and they kept him safe. And as Zeus grew older, he decided that he would rescue his brothers and sisters. So Zeus sought the counsel of the Titan goddess Medusa. She was the goddess of good counsel, planning, cunning, and wisdom. And she and Zeus hatched a plan to save the ingested siblings. He obtained a special potion, and he disguised himself so that his father Cronus wouldn't recognize him. And at the instigation of Zeus, Medusa gave the potion to Cronus. And when he drank it, He went into a fit of coughing and retching, and he coughed so violently that he coughed up the 5 previously ingested kids. And the children were Hades, Poseidon, Demeter, Hera, and Hestia. Well, now, as you can imagine, Daddy Cronus, he was furious at this trick. And Cronus and the Titans began a war amongst the gods. They battled Zeus and his siblings for years and years, and Metis was by Zeus's side, advising him on strategy and tactics. And when the dust all settled, Zeus had won. Now, Zeus might have been the youngest child, but he was the most powerful of all of his brothers and sisters. He controlled thunder and lightning bolts were his weapons. And he could control the weather. He could mimic people's voices. He could shapeshift into any animal or person he chose. And Zeus was also the keeper of oaths. He harshly punished those who lied or made dishonest business deals, and the offenders would be punished by being turned into animals or something worse. Well, now with the war over, Zeus decided that he would divide the world amongst the brothers to rule. Zeus, he took the best for himself, the sky, the home of Mount Olympus. And he gave his brother Poseidon the oceans and the seas. And Hades, he got the worst of the deal. He got the underworld. And the sisters got nothing.
Doesn't sound too bad to me. I'm just saying, I mean, dark and quaint and black all over. Yeah, sign me up.
Well, the mighty and powerful Zeus sat high on the throne as the ruler of all the gods at Mount Olympus and the ruler of all the humans on the earth. Now, Zeus was a notorious womanizer, and being raised by nymphs, which happens to be the origin of the word nymphomaniac, he had been taught quite a bit about lust and sexual prowess. And suddenly he set his eyes on the Titan Metis. He admired her. He admired her as much as he could for her knowledge. And she knew more than any of the other gods or mortal people. However, the goddess of crafty thought had seen Zeus's shenanigans, and she did not want anything to do with his advances. But Zeus pursued her. And in order to escape his embraces, she turned herself into many different forms. But he was unrelenting. She changed herself into different animals to avoid having to have sex with him. It's like, come here, baby. Oh, shit, you're a goat.
I'm like,
she was changing her form just to get away from him. But
so what I was gonna say, so what you're saying is that the tactics that men and women use now have not changed whatsoever. Got it. Okay.
Not in the slightest.
And Zeus said, "You're a goat. I ain't never stopped me before. Get over here."
You're like, hey, you're not
right.
bad. Delicious.
Oh, she's a sneaky snake now.
So, however, Zeus was both determined and equally proficient at changing his form. So she turned to the goat. He turned to the goat. She's like, oh, shit. So, sorry, I got tickled. I had a mental image. You got to excuse me. But eventually, she surrendered to his pursuit. And Zeus married Metis. She was the first love and the first wife of Zeus. And eventually, after more shape-shifting and trying to dodge him, eventually they had sex. And suddenly, Zeus feared the worst. He feared the consequences. Because although Zeus was married to Metis, he feared her power and her cunning and her knowledge. An oracle of Gaia had prophesied that the first child of Metis would be a daughter, and that she would be strong and powerful like her father. And the second child would be a boy, a son destined by fate to rule the gods. And that boy would overthrow the mighty Zeus and take his throne. Kind of sounds like a little thing between Zeus and his daddy, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
So Zeus took the oracle's warning very seriously. Because you see, it had also been foretold that Metis would bear children more powerful than their father, no matter who their father was. And that included Zeus. So in order to forestall the dire consequences, Zeus concocted a plan that would change the prophecy. The next time he saw Metis, he flattered her and he put her at ease. And they were intimate because he just couldn't help himself. And then Zeus asked Metis to play a game with him. He wanted her to change into different animals. Believing it was all in fun, she transformed into many creatures, big and small, a fish, a bird, a cat, a dog. And when she transformed into a fly, Zeus opened his mouth and he swallowed her.
That's a fucked up way of foreplay there, friends. Like, I mean, I like having fun, but wow, that's a little too far for me.
Well, one in wins, gentlemen, and Metis was pregnant. Now, some stories say that she was pregnant before the game, and some say she became pregnant during the game. But either way, a child was conceived, and Zeus had just ingested his wife and his unborn child. Again, kind of sounds like what his daddy did.
Like father, like son.
Mm-hmm.
Zeus, the king of daddy issues.
That's right. But by consuming Metis, he gained her wisdom, allegedly. Because you see, once he swallowed Metis, he considered the problem solved, and he promptly married his sister Hera.
Well.
But again, it was too late. Metis already being pregnant. So the immortal child that Metis was carrying was unharmed in the process of ingestation. And perhaps Metis was a bit miffed about being tricked, or perhaps she wanted to protect her child. But for whatever the reason, inside Zeus's stomach, Metis went to work. She began making her unborn daughter a helmet and a robe, and she birthed Athena inside of Zeus and made her a shield and a sword. And the hammering sounds from within Zeus's stomach caused him great pain. And Athena grew inside of Zeus's head, and he developed an unbearable headache, which made him scream out in pain so loudly that it could be heard throughout the heavens and the earth. And the other gods rushed to his side to see what the problem was. And eventually Zeus could take no more. Amid thunderous screams of pain, Hermes realized what needed to be done. And Hermes ordered Hephaestus to split open the skull of Zeus with a double-headed Minoan axe. And from the crown of Zeus's head, Athena leapt out. She was fully grown and armed. She held a sword and a shield and bounded into the heavens in a full set of gleaming armor. Now, listen, don't worry about Zeus. He was fine. He was none the worse for the wear after the experience. After all, he was immortal, so he was fine. Okay? So don't get worried about Zeus. He's all right.
You know that moment where they're just like, excuse me, just 1 second. I'm just going to squeech in right here. And just, yeah, that's pretty much what she did. She's just like, excuse me 1 second. Just going to come on up out of here.
Right. Now, Athena was a warrior goddess from birth, and she's kind of identified in most texts as Zeus's first child. And due to the way she was born, she was known as the goddess of wisdom, war, courage, civilization, metalworking, cunning intelligence, and battle. Now, Athena is described as having been very beautiful, and she had distinctive eyes. They were described as bright and gleaming of a bluish gray or silvery hue. Her hair was said to be beautiful flowing locks, and like every other god on Mount Olympus, she was vain. She was vain. And she was attended by an owl and wore a breastplate given to her by Zeus called the Aegeus. Now, the owl and the olive tree were both very sacred to Athena, so she protected them. And Athena is always depicted as a majestic lady with a stern and beautiful face, full, unsmiling lips, and a graceful build that radiates power and authority. And she's usually depicted in full armor. Sometimes she's depicted in a long tunic and elaborate crested Corinthian helmet, where she holds her spear in one hand and the Aegeus in the other. Now, Athena's personality is very dualistic. Sometimes she exhibits extremely masculine qualities, and other times she's the vision of feminine beauty and perfection. And her personality changed almost on a daily basis depending on the situation. She would use her wisdom to determine how she should react. And to Athena, war wasn't just an excuse to kill people, or an excuse for an act of aggression. She felt that it was a battle of wits, and whoever had the best strategy won. It was her idea, by the way, to build the Trojan horse and label it as a gift from Athena. And she also viewed a war as kind of a necessary way of settling things once and for all and bringing about peace. Athena would always think out carefully who should win, and then she'd help them to do so. However, sometimes she'd change her mind halfway through. And let's be clear, Athena seldom sided with the loser of a war in a war. And she's not exactly known for playing fair either. She had mystical powers like her father Zeus, and she could shapeshift at will and consistently disguised her true form. She commonly used her shapeshifting abilities to take on a variety of human forms to deceive others. In the Iliad, Book 22, Athena pretends to be Hector's brother to lure him in closer so Achilles can kill him more easily. So you see, she don't play fair. She's not above trickery. She's all about the strategy and the game. Now, in Greek mythology, Athena is touted as the helper of heroes, and she would always help them on their quests and adventures. Odysseus in the Odyssey, Hercules and the 12 Labors, Jason to build the magical ship, the Argo, and of course, Perseus. All the great Greek heroes prayed to Athena for counsel and assistance. And Athena was quite skillful and creative, not just in strategy, but also in weaving and spinning. And this was one of her more feminine characteristics. She loved to show off her talents. And one day she decided to have a weaving contest with Arachne. And when it became obvious that Arachne had made the superior woven item, Athena flew into a rage. She could not stand to lose, and her vanity and pride drove her to vengeance, and she turned Arachne into a spider, doomed forever to weave and spin. Go ahead, Ryan.
She is exhibiting the qualities of Zeus, for sure. Very petty, very vain, very.
She is her father's child.
She definitely very much is so.
Now, Athena is also the original feminist. She eternally remained a virgin, and she had no need of a man to make her happy. In fact, she avoided intimate contact with males, both god and mortal. She felt that sex and love only complicated things. Jesus, don't we all know that to be true? And she was always awkward in situations of intimacy. And as far as anyone knew, she never had a lover, and she never married. And she was referred to as Athena Parthenos, or Athena the Virgin. And she was quite content alone with her warrior instincts and spinning and weaving.
That's going to be my new title, by the way.
What?
Blake, whatever the word you just said.
The Virgin?
Oh,
yeah, the Virgin.
Parthenos?
Yes,
Parthenos?
the Virgin. Just Blake.
No,
Lars got hell.
Even though Zeus was concerned that Athena would challenge his rule, she had no interest in becoming the queen of Olympus. And Athena became Zeus's favorite daughter. Now, Athena and Poseidon were two of the major 12 Olympian gods. And they hated each other. The rivalry was created when a very prominent city in Greece was seeking a patron deity to protect them. It was a very wealthy city that could build great temples and statues to honor their protector. And it was ruled by King Cecrops. He had ruled so cleverly and had been so successful that the city was truly a Greek gem, one that any god would be proud to call theirs. And the city also sat on the Sea of Crete, and it relied on the waters for travel and trade. However, the city was also a significant sea power in war, and they had defeated the Persian fleet in the Battle of Salamis in 480 BC. And both gods wanted that city. Both believed that they had the right to bring the city under their protection and name it after themselves and claim the glory. And child, it got heated. Both gods were so determined that Zeus had to intercede. And the solution he offered was a contest. between Athena and Poseidon, with King Cecrops and himself as the judge, and the prize would be the city. So the two gods agreed to the contest. Athena and Poseidon met on the sacred hill of the Acropolis. Zeus and King Cecrops and the people of the city gathered to witness the spectacle that was sure to ensue. I mean, who wouldn't want to watch two gods fight it out? Come on. And the
That's what
rules
I'm
were
saying.
and the rules were very simple. Each god would present the city with a gift, and the best gift wins. The king and the city would decide which gift they preferred. Now, there was no chivalry here. Once the rules were laid out, Poseidon bounded into action, and with one swift move, he struck his trident into the ground, and the earth began to shake, and an underground sea was created, and the water flowed up from the hole in the earth made by the trident, and a spring was created. Poseidon's gift was ever-flowing water. But the city had access to plenty of rivers and was in proximity to the sea. And the water that sprung up from the spring, it was salt water because it was seawater.
Oh, damn.
They're just sitting over here like, thanks.
Cool.
I guess. Cool, friend.
Yippee.
So it was salty and the people couldn't drink it. And the location of the spring could flood the city and it could destroy their crops with the salty water. So as you can imagine, the people weren't real enthusiastic about the gift from Poseidon.
Thanks.
Get out of here, Poseidon. Jesus.
Now, some texts will say that Poseidon gave the city a horse because he was also the god of horses. But the area was a very mountainous region, so a horse didn't really serve much purpose. And while they did marvel at the beauty of the animal, the gift was really not very beneficial to the city. So
Thanks.
mostly Poseidon struck out.
Here's a horse and some water you can't drink.
Exactly.
Oh, poor Poseidon.
Mhm.
Nah, fuck him. Then it was Athena's turn. Now, she had had a moment to consider what the city might actually use or need. And the goddess kneeled and she planted something in the earth. And everyone held their breath. In a moment, a fully grown tree arose from the earth. Athena's gift was an olive tree. The tree could be a source for timber to use for building homes. Its fruit was nutritional and could be consumed. The fruit could be pressed to make oil for cooking or for lamps or for preservation or pain relief. And the citizens were enamored of this amazing tree. Athena's gift was superior beyond a doubt. And without hesitation, King Cecrops proclaimed Athena the winner. But Poseidon protested. He wanted the people to vote. Okay, so what are you gonna do?
Tree, water you can't drink.
So what's the king to do? So the king took a vote. And strangely enough, all of the men voted for Poseidon. And all of the women voted for Athena.
I'm
But
shocked.
what Poseidon didn't know was that the women in the city outnumbered the men by one. Athena won by a single vote. The goddess of wisdom immediately gave her name to the city and called it Athens. Well, now Poseidon, he's a bit of a sore loser. And instead of accepting his defeat with dignity, Poseidon flew into a rage. He did not accept the decision. He began to flood the city and make the earth shake. According to the writer Apollodorus, Poseidon in hot anger flooded the Thracian plain and laid Attica under the sea.
Hold on, wait. Somebody just said in the comments there, Thomas said, I'm gonna need a recount.
Shut up, Thomas. It ain't about you. That's probably what Poseidon wanted. He was being a little baby.
Probably. Oh God.
So now Poseidon's throwing a fit. Now he's flooding this city. And so the newly named city of Athens was about to be destroyed by Poseidon. And Zeus, he intervened. And he ordered Poseidon to stop the flood. And in exchange, he would punish the women who voted for Athena that caused him to lose.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no shit.
Well,
Oh.
Poseidon seemed satisfied, and the waters began to recede. And the women were punished by losing their right to vote. And the city was instructed that from that day forward, all the children would be of patrilineal descent. That meant that children, especially the sons, would forever now on carry their father's last name instead of their mother's. So the people of Athens honored their new patron by building a large acropolis in the center of the city. And at the top of the acropolis, they constructed a beautiful temple to Athena, and they called it the Parthenon. The hill became a sacred place devoted to the cult of Athena, and it overlooked the sea.
Hmm.
And the hatred between the two gods grew even greater. Now, sometime after this, a girl named Medusa was born. She was born the youngest daughter of the ancient primordial deities Phorcys and Ceto. She had two sisters, Steno and Uriel, and they were all born Gorgons. But Medusa was a little different from her sisters. She was mortal. She alone was born with a beautiful face, while her older sisters possessed terrifying appearances. And even though she was raised by monsters, she had a happy childhood. She was kind of the bridge between the mortal and the immortal world. And her home was happy. And when she was little, she would play with her sisters and her best friend Ithacus. She would pretend to be the goddess Athena. Medusa so deeply admired her and wanted to be just like her. She yearned to be a priestess and belong to the great temple of the goddess. She said that when she was old enough, she would give up everything and become a priestess in the temple of Athena. And as she grew, she became even more lovely. Ithacus, Medusa's best friend, spent every day with her, and he had fallen in love with her, but he had kept his feelings to himself. They weren't old enough to be in a formal relationship, so he stayed quiet for many years. And he wasn't really sure that Medusa felt the same way. But one day, when they went for their usual walk, amidst the giggles and laughter, they found themselves face to face, staring at each other, both with love in their eyes. Ithacus took the opportunity. He confessed his love to Medusa. He told her that he loved her deeply and that he wished to be by her side for all eternity. Medusa smiled, and she wrapped her arms around him and said, "I love you too." But when the embrace ended, her smile faded, but kindness and compassion were in her eyes, and she gently touched his face and told Ithacus, "But our love can never be. I can never be with you because there's something that I wish for with all of my being." And she took him by the hand and led him to the temple of Athena and told him, "I long to become a priestess in the great temple of Athena, and to belong, I must remain pure and not fall into temptation." Well, Ithacus loved Medusa so much that although his heart was breaking, her happiness was truly the only thing that mattered to him. And in that moment, he knew true and genuine love. And he decided that he would support her in her dream, no matter what path she followed. And when Medusa was old enough, she began to prepare herself to be a priestess. She went to the temple to give herself eternally to the goddess. Virginity and chastity were non negotiable requirements for the job. And Athena's
out.
priestess, huh?
So, well, I'm out.
Whoops.
My bad.
Didn't get to you in time, huh? Well, Athena's priestesses must be pure in order to stand before her. And Medusa's dream began to become a reality. The preparations that the apprentices went through were difficult and demanding. They were given grueling tests to demonstrate their discipline and wisdom and purity and conduct and dedication. And Medusa passed them all. She had finally achieved her lifelong dream and was designated a priestess at the temple of Athena. And she was praised for her exemplary conduct and her discipline. And over the years, She gained fame among the devout who attended the temple of Athena. Many came to watch her perform the sacred rituals in the temple. She performed each one with such perfect, in such a perfect manner and with such admirable reverence. She had a fair face and a slender figure and shiny, flowing, perfect hair. The Roman poet Ovid especially praises the glory of Medusa's hair, calling it the most wonderful of all of her charms. And the faithful Medusa was indeed exquisite. Her beauty would render men speechless and captivated all who were near her. She had caught many admirers in her charms, and the admirers knew that she would never reciprocate, so they had to be content to adore her from afar. And Medusa was a perfect priestess, perhaps too perfect. Athena knew. Now, yeah. You know, I always have one of those in there.
Dun, dun, dun.
Now, Athena knew everything that happened in her temple, and she watched stealthily from afar, paying special attention to Medusa. The news had spread rapidly that there was a stunning young woman attending the temple of Athena, and because she was so beautiful, the number of visitors who went to the temple just to admire her grew every day. And one day, while Medusa was performing the daily rituals to Athena, thousands of worshippers had arrived. Athena looked down and she was pleased and flattered, and she fixed her gaze on the temple so that she could watch herself being glorified. A few moments later, a man called out from the crowd, "Medusa, you are far more beautiful than Athena, and your hair, it's so much more beautiful."
Ooh,
Oh, shit.
he said the wrong thing.
Now this
You
hurt.
hear the record scratch.
That's right. Now this hurt and enraged Athena. And even worse, all the gods on Mount Olympus had witnessed the spectacle. She then realized that the crowds were not at the temple to worship her. They had come to see Medusa. And Athena didn't know what to do. She couldn't punish her followers that came to her sanctuary to praise her. And in all fairness, she couldn't punish Medusa because she was not to blame, because she had done nothing but her daily duties. And Medusa had always been dedicated and loyal. And so in that moment, Athena chose to do nothing. But Athena dedicated herself to observe with bitterness because her worship was being overshadowed by the radiant priestess. Poseidon had also seen, and he believed that this was the right time to take his revenge. Medusa was spotted by Poseidon one day walking along the shoreline, and even he was enchanted with her beauty and her grace, and he fell instantly in love with her. He was mesmerized by her flowing golden hair and perfect ringlets that framed her angelic face, and her lips, they were as red as wine. And because of the feud with Athena, owning one of her priestesses became his obsession. He tried to flatter and seduce Medusa, but she resisted all flirtations by the god. But Poseidon was relentless. He tried to charm and beguile her, but Medusa would yield to no man. And to Poseidon's consternation, she wouldn't give himself to her. She wouldn't give himself to him either. So he watched Medusa for many days, noticing her actions and her movements, waiting for his moment. But it was very hard to catch Medusa alone. She was always surrounded by friends or other priestesses of Athena. So it was impossible to make a move. And his desire grew stronger. But just as she had done when she was a child, Medusa enjoyed taking walks. And one afternoon, Medusa was walking to the temple of Athena to give offerings, alone. And Poseidon seized his chance. As she walked on the beach, she heard a deep voice call her name and saw a large being emerging from the water. He tried to seduce her, and she rejected him. He tried to tempt and fascinate her, and again she refused, saying she would never give up being a priestess to satisfy him, and Athena would never approve. Poseidon grabbed Medusa and hissed, "She won't be here to decide." Filled with fear, Medusa fought. She struggled, Panic-stricken, she swung wildly at the attacker, and she hit him in the head with all of her might. The god was stunned, and Medusa pulled free of his grasp. In desperation, she cried out for help and ran as fast as she could to the temple of Athena. It was the only place that she would be safe. She stumbled running up the stairs, desperately calling out to the goddess to save her. She fell to her knees at the feet of the statue of Athena and implored her to help, begging the goddess to protect her. But no protection was given that evening. Filled with desire for the girl and hatred for Athena, Poseidon pursued her into the temple. He saw her on the ground in front of the statue, pleading for help. Blinded by lust and rage, he grabbed Medusa as forcefully as he could, and she tried to flee, but she could not overcome the strength of the god. And there, he pinned her against the altar of Athena and violated the most faithful of his rival's priestesses. And once the terrible act was completed, he returned to the sea, leaving the temple and Medusa forever stained.
God, took the only thing that she loved from her. And where was Athena this whole time? Was she just not paying attention, or was she?
Medusa, with tears staining her face, she lay shattered on the floor of the sanctuary, alone. She began to pray to the goddess for guidance and forgiveness, but was only able to breathe the words in soft whimpers. Well, Athena had seen what had happened, and she went to her temple, and she was filled with fury. She blamed Medusa for the desecration of her immaculate temple. It was Medusa's exuberance and vanity that caused men to harass her, and Athena blamed her for enticing Poseidon and bringing shame to her holy sanctuary. Punishing Poseidon was out of the question because Athena deemed the act as just part of his nature, and she was unable to turn her rage on her uncle because they were equals. So instead, she would punish Medusa. Athena passed her judgment and found Medusa guilty of seducing the god Poseidon and of bringing dishonor on the temple and the goddess. Athena looked down on the weak and crumpled form and cursed Medusa for betraying her. In an act of contempt and malice, she punished her in the most fitting way she could think. She would take away her beauty so that no man would ever look on her again. She decided to turn Medusa into a monster, a horrifying being just like her sisters, except with Athena, she would add a twist. She would transform her beautiful hair into a mass of snakes. And as she spoke it, it was done. Medusa's skin began to crack and dry and flake, and her eyes began to bulge and sting. Her shoulders bled as dark wings ripped through her skin. She screamed in pain as long, sharp tusks split her gums, and her beautiful hair fell to the floor in clumps, and from her scalp slithered a tangled web of venomous snakes. And once the transformation was completed, Athena spoke these words: "For now and forever, whomever gazes upon you, whomever you see, will be turned to stone." And she vanished as quickly as she had come.
Bitch.
What a bitch.
I'm sorry, all these Greek gods just suck out loud, like every last one.
What the?
So crumpled and devastated, Medusa wept inconsolably. She was no longer pure, and her appearance was a horrifying visage. Her once beautiful face now would inspire terror in the hearts of mortals. And she wailed in sorrow and in pain, the most awful of sounds. And she lay at the feet of the statue of the goddess Athena, broken. Rumors quickly began to circulate about the girl, and they reached the ear of Medusa's childhood friend Ithacus. And when night fell, he went to search for Medusa at the temple of Athena When he entered the darkness of the sanctuary, he paused. At the feet of Athena's statue, he saw a figure lying on the floor. He could hear the muffled, wounded cries of anguish. Ithacus gently called out to her with words of comfort. He continued to speak as he slowly approached, but she desperately called out to him, "Do not come near. I do not want you to see what I have become." But he didn't listen, and he continued to draw closer. And when he was close enough, he reached out his hand and he touched her shoulder and was bitten. Ithacus drew back and yelped in pain. The sound frightened Medusa, and she turned and looked into the eyes of Ithacus. He froze in fear at seeing her appearance and turned to stone before her eyes. She was terrified. She didn't understand what had just happened. She threw her arms around the stone that had once been her friend, and she clung to him and screamed in despair. Her mind was confused. She realized that she had just done something terrible, but she didn't mean to. She didn't know. She would never, ever harm anyone, especially Ithacus, who was the only true love she had known. She couldn't believe what she had just caused. Finally realizing what she was condemned to be, and afraid of harming anyone else, she covered her head with a shawl and fled the city in desperation. But the rumors had circulated that there was a monster at the temple of Athena, and people who saw her shouted atrocities at her ghastly appearance. And as she made her way out of the city, she left behind a trail of stone statues. She hid among the trees, trying not to be seen. But the news had spread about the horrible, terrifying creature terrorizing and petrifying the citizens of Athens. So the men gathered their picks and their spears and their torches. They were going to hunt the monster, and when they found it, they were going to kill it. The men who went to hunt Medusa, they never returned. But eventually they were found, transformed into stones scattered along the landscape. Medusa escaped to an ancient abandoned city on an island where no one had lived for years. She's hid herself away in isolation, filled with sadness and with pain. And eventually, her delicate and charming humanity faded away, and she became frightening and more hostile. Her name had become synonymous with fear, malevolence, hatred, and monstrosity. No longer Medusa the beautiful, now she was Medusa the Gorgon, a beast that could turn men into stone with a single glance. And many so-called heroes set out on quests to seek their glory by way of killing the monster Medusa. But the men that came to hunt the monster never returned. And a great stone garden grew on the Isle of the Gorgon. Now, once upon a time, there was a king named Acrisius, and he was the ruler of the city of Argos. And he had one beautiful daughter named Danae. And like most kings and gods, Acrisius often sought the wisdom of the oracle. One day he traveled to visit the oracle of Delphi, and he wanted to know if he would ever have a male heir to inherit his throne and carry on his legacy. Only male children could inherit wealth, titles, and land. And if a man had no sons, the eldest male in the family would be bequeathed the estates and manage further the family legacy. But the oracle gave King Acrisius a very disturbing prophecy. The oracle told Acrisius that he would have no sons, but his daughter Danae, she would give birth to a child. But the king should take heed, for he would be killed by his daughter's son. King Acrisius wasted no time. When he returned to Argos, he heeded the warning of the oracle. Now his daughter Danae was childless at the time, and to prevent the prophecy from being fulfilled, he locked his daughter in a tower so high that no mortal man could reach her. He incarcerated her to ensure she remained a virgin. He gave her very little food and water, and slowly he began to starve her. He wouldn't kill her outright. He would just carry out his daily duties and wait for news of her death. However, Zeus, having seen the princess from his throne on Mount Olympus, was struck by her beauty and was quite taken with the beautiful Danae. One night, Zeus transformed himself into a glittering shower of gold and passed through the bars of her cell and into her room. And as the confetti of gold fell over her body, Danae became pregnant. And Zeus crept out the same way he crept in. Now, it was not unusual in that time. Now, in all this Greek mythology, women could be pregnant by the wind blowing on them, okay?
I was about to say, because this is not the biology class I took.
No.
Yeah, nobody gets pregnant with golden showers.
I don't remember.
Not. I'm going to let that sit there.
Think of broke leg.
We're just going to wait till it passes.
No, go for it. It's going to be a minute. It's going to be a minute.
But Ryan, you're correct.
Yep.
Mortals.
Nobody gets pregnant from golden showers. You're right, right?
Mortals do not.
Oh my God.
But we are not talking about a mortal. We are talking about the highest of all the high gods, Zeus.
True.
Pregnant. He could do it just like that.
You get a baby, and you get a baby,
and
you get a baby.
I miss you. Anytime Greek sneezes, somebody ends up pregnant. So.
That's right. Well, months passed, and no word of Danae's death had come to the king. So Perseus figured out he better go find out what's going on. So he ascended the steps of the tower, and he opened up the door, expecting to find his daughter's lifeless body. But when he entered his room, he was shocked to see that Danae was very much alive, and in her arms, a newborn baby boy. She told him the story of her visit from Zeus, and that her new son, Perseus, was the son of a god. Enraged to learn that his daughter had had a child, he began to craft another solution to forestall his death. He knew he couldn't just kill the child of Zeus. He was afraid Zeus would take vengeance on him, and he would incur the wrath of the most powerful of all the gods. So he came up with another idea. He had his best carpenters construct a chest about the size of a coffin and nail it to a small wooden raft. And once completed, under the cover of darkness, King Acrisius sealed Danae and Perseus in the box, and he threw them into the sea. The king felt no sadness because he hadn't technically harmed his child or the child of a god. It would be up to the rulers of Mount Olympus to determine the fate of the young mother and her son. In the king's eyes, his hands were clean.
In my eyes, he's a piece of shit, but that's okay. Anyways.
But Zeus saw all, and he guided that small raft to come safely to rest on the island of Seriphos. A fisherman found Danae and her son, and he took them in. The kind fisherman raised Perseus as his own. But this wasn't just any fisherman. This man, his name was Dictys, and he was the brother of Polydectes, the king of Seriphos. Now, the boy and his mother lived peacefully on the island of Seriphos for many years. And Perseus grew to be strong and handsome and smart, and he adored his mother and he protected her. He learned to swim and fish and live off the land, and they were happy. However, King Polydectes, he'd always desired Danae, and he wanted to wed her and make her his wife. But she refused his advances, and she declined his gifts, and Perseus was always at her side to protect her. But the king was insistent, and Danae was very uncomfortable. Polydectes wanted Danae all to himself, and it seemed like that boy was always in the way. So the king began to search for a way to rid himself of the problem of Perseus. And an opportunity soon presented itself. The king concocted a plan to trick Perseus. King Polydectes gathered his people together and hosted a great feast under the guise of collecting contributions for the marriage of Hippodamia, who was the tamer of horses. The king required that every man bring a horse as a gift to the new couple. But Perseus had no money, none to his name. And when Perseus and Danae arrived at the celebration empty-handed, the king saw an opportunity to punish the young man. The king publicly confronted Perseus, demanding to know why he had disobeyed the instructions of his king. Perseus said, in a bit of a boastful manner, "Because I have no money, but I can bring you a far more valuable gift. I will bring you the head of Medusa the Gorgon." The partygoers gasped, and a murmur rose from the crowd. Oh, this was working out much better than planned. The crafty king replied, "Bring me the head of Medusa, and all will be forgiven. As your king, I command it." The king had only planned to punish Perseus for being disobedient, but now the prideful young man had volunteered for his own death. And a smile crossed the face of the king in the hopes that Perseus would not succeed. Oh, shit.
I said the king's like, "It's your funeral." Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what the hell is wrong with all of these men back then?
Yeah, there is no good person in any of these stories whatsoever.
No, like,
There is no hero at
my,
all.
my son or the son of my daughter is gonna kill me, so I'm just gonna ship you out of nowhere. Good luck, daughter.
Well, oh shit is the right explanation, because this arrogant young man did not expect the king to accept his offer. But now he had been commanded to seek out the Gorgon and kill it. And his only real knowledge of Medusa lay within the frightening tales that he'd heard about the terrifying creature that awaited him. But his hubris had determined his fate. So he embarked on a true hero's quest: slay the monster, rid the land of the threat, and return home the triumphant hero. Disregard the fact that this was a task that every other man who had tried it before him had failed at. But Perseus had an advantage that most heroes didn't have. He was a demigod, a child born of a mortal and a god. And he had certain godlike skills and the favor of the gods on his side. However, because he was also mortal, he actually could be killed. Well, kind of a dual-edged sword. But Perseus stepped boldly into the unknown and set out to be the hero he was destined to become. And not far into his journey, he realized that he had no idea where to find Medusa. So, what do?
That's me.
I did not plan accordingly.
I'd just be screaming, "I'm going on an adventure!"
He's going, oh my God, I chose poorly.
Tom, take me to
Yes.
Medusa.
Yeah.
Siri.
So, what do you do in that case? Well, if you're the child of a god, you pray to the gods for help. And not surprising, there were many gods willing to come to the aid of the son of Zeus. And he brought them gifts. Oh, and they brought him gifts worthy of the gods, straight from Mount Olympus. Hermes arrived first and gave him an indestructible sword. Athena came to his side and presented him with an exquisite shield so polished that he could see his reflection in it. And they advised him to seek the help of the Greys. The Greys were 3 old wise women who could help him find the other items he needed to complete his quest, and tell him where the lair of Medusa was. These ancient beings, the Greys, took the form of old women, and they shared a single eye and a single tooth. And when Perseus, I don't know, don't ask me, I'm telling you what it says. And when Perseus found them, he watched them pass the single eye between them, each wanting a turn to see the handsome young man that had just wandered into their cave. Perhaps they were anticipating their next meal. They were rumored to have a taste for human flesh. But Perseus, undeterred, he asked his question. The sisters didn't seem to be in a cooperative mood, and they refused to tell him the location of the items he needed to defeat the Gorgon. And the next time the eye was passed between them, Perseus snatched it from their grasp, leaving them blind. And he held the eye high above his head and threatened to destroy it if they didn't reveal the answers he sought. The women were forced to tell him where to find the monster and also the other items he needed to defeat the Gorgon. And those items hid in the forest with the nymphs. So Perseus traveled to the forest to find the nymphs. The lustful deities giggled and purred at the sight of the beautiful man that had just wandered into their garden.
Perseus is like, oh no, I have to go to the land of the nymphs. Whatever shall I do?
They petted Perseus and they stroked his hair. And they wanted to enchant him and keep him for themselves.
Wait, please, no, stop.
Undeterred by the seductive beings, Perseus told them of his quest and that he had been sent by the Greys to collect the necessary items to defeat Medusa. Seeing that Perseus would not succumb to their charms, they gifted him winged sandals from Hermes, the cap of invisibility that belonged to Hades, an enchanted bag that could safely contain the head of the Gorgon. And the nymphs warned him that he must put the head in the bag and never be tempted to look inside. He could never lay eyes on the monster, even in death. Her gaze was as powerful in life, and it would always have the power to turn men to stone. The last gift he received was another weapon from the gods, a sickle. The nymphs gave him a final warning. No matter what, do not look directly at Medusa, or else your journey will be ended. So following the direction of the nymphs, Perseus used the winged sandals to fly to the Gorgon Isle. It was in the middle of the ocean. Yeah, I know, he's got these little flappy things on his feet. Yeah, go on with your bad self here, Perseus.
No, I'm just laughing at Thomas. Thomas asked if there was directions to that forest. Were you able to find any, Shelley, for Thomas?
What kind of gifts do you have to offer me, Thomas?
Oh, let's not go
Well.
there.
Carrying on.
That's a no,
So-
Thomas.
Perseus used winged sandals to fly to the Gorgon Isle. It was in the middle of the ocean, and he touched down on the rocky island of Sarpedon. And he moved quietly and cautiously. He passed statues of men and beasts, all turned to stone. All were forever frozen with a look of terror on their face. He searched the island and finally came upon the cave of the Gorgon. And once night fell, he crept silently into the darkness of the cavern. He kept his back to the wall and gazed into his shield. And as he approached to turn in the cave, he stopped. He held his shield to the edge to see what awaited him. And in the darkness, he saw a form on the floor of the cave. It was Medusa, sleeping amongst the stone corpses of her victims. His heart raced and he feared that the sound would wake the slumbering monster. Perseus drew his sword and moved around the corner. Keeping his back to the beast, he used Athena's bronze shield as his guide, and with slow, silent steps, he began to walk backwards towards Medusa. And when he was close enough, he raised his sword and he closed his eyes. As he stood over the sleeping creature in a single swift, deadly motion, Perseus severed her head. The body of the Gorgon thrashed and withered, and the head of Medusa rolled to the feet of Perseus. Keeping his eyes closed tightly, he stuffed the head into the enchanted bag and tied it closed tightly. And only then did he dare to open his eyes. To Perseus' surprise, from the decapitated body, two creatures sprang forth, the winged horse Pegasus and his brother, the giant Chrysaor. When Medusa was violated in the temple of Athena by Poseidon, she had become pregnant. But she had held her babies inside her for all this long time to keep them safe from others and from herself. But once her head was cut off, her children sprang from her wound, fully grown and capable of taking care of themselves.
Were these people not capable of having infants? Like, I mean, shit. I'm sorry.
You're talking about gods and demigods.
Still.
Hey, I just report the news, I don't make it. Okay?
No. Go ahead. Carry on with yourself.
When I was born, I was already a man.
So the birth of Perseus and Chrysaor caused a great wave of sound, and this sound of it was a sound of torment and defeat that carried to Medusa's sisters. Upon hearing the anguished sound of Medusa and Medusa dying, her sisters began to wail and came to give chase to her killer. Perseus fled the island with the monster's heads in his sack and the two angry sisters close on his heels, but they couldn't catch him because of Athena's help. He vanished. He put on the cap of invisibility and he took to the air in his winged sandals. He was on his way back to Seriphos to return as the conquering hero. But strangely enough, Medusa's story doesn't end with her death. As Perseus flew over Libya, drops of Medusa's blood fell to the ground, and each drop immediately turned into tangles of poisonous snakes. And it's because of this that to this day, Libya abounds with serpents. Now, on his way home, Perseus stopped off to do some hero stuff. Like he used the head of Medusa to defeat the Titan known as the Kraken and save the lovely Andromeda from, certain death. And then he married her. And he tamed the wild horse Pegasus and put Andromeda on Pegasus' back, and together they returned to Seriphos. But when Perseus arrived at Seriphos, things were not as he had left them. His mother Danae had continued to refuse the advances of King Polydectes, and the angry king had turned to violence to try to gain Perseus' mother as his bride. And without Perseus there to protect her, in fear for her life, she had gone into hiding. Perseus leapt onto the back of Pegasus and flew to the castle. The king's guards drew their swords, ready to defend their king. Perseus drew the head of Medusa from the bag and turned them all to stone. The king, now afraid for his life, he ran. But it was too late. As he turned to glance behind, he gazed upon the severed head of the Gorgon, and he was instantly turned to stone, forever immortalizing the look of terror on his face. And since that day, the island of Seriphos has been known for its numerous rocks and landscape of stones. And the title of king passed from Polydectes to his brother Dictys, the man who had been so kind to Danae and Perseus. Finally reunited, Danae threw her arms around her son, the hero, thankful that she would never have to live in fear again. And now that the hero quest was completed, Perseus returned the gifts he received back to the gods. And Perseus gave Medusa's head to the goddess Athena for safekeeping as a votive gift. The goddess placed it in the center of her shield, called the Aegeus, to terrify her enemies. And just like the eyes of Medusa, Athena's shield had the power to turn her enemies to stone. Athena then collected some of the remaining blood and gave most of it to Asclepius. He used the blood from the left side of Medusa's head to take people's lives, and the blood from the right side of Medusa's head to raise people from the dead. And the remaining 2 drops of blood, Athena gave to her adopted son. 1 drop was a cure-all, the other a deadly poison. And always the protector of heroes, Athena put aside in a bronze jar a lock of Medusa's hair, aka the head of a snake. She gave this gift to Heracles. Even though it didn't have the power of Medusa's gaze, that single lock had the power to cast terror into the hearts of any enemy unfortunate enough to behold it. Medusa's image began to appear on pottery and above doors. Her image was thought to ward off evil. She was always depicted facing forward, not in profile like most Greek and Roman works of art. And eventually, Perseus returned to Argos with Danae and Andromeda. King Acrisius had gone to Larissa in Greece, most likely to avoid Perseus. Remember King Acrisius? That's his grandpa who threw him in the box and his mama into the sea.
Mm-hmm.
But Perseus went to Acrisius in search of his grandfather. Larissa in search of his grandfather. And when he arrived, he was told that there were funeral games being held there. Well, he was a great athlete, and he had tremendous strength and a bit of bravado, and he had just cut the head off of Gorgon. So he decided he was going to enter the games. So he put the search for Grandpa on hold for a hot minute. And he participated in the discus throwing event, and he had done wonderfully well. But as fate would have it, Perseus threw a discus that flew wildly off track into the crowd. The discus hit a man in the head and killed him instantly. That man? King Acrisius, his grandfather, who had been attending the games. And the prophecy of the Oracle of Delphi that had been said so many years earlier had finally come to pass. So the struggle to, I always wrap up my stories. If I tell you in the beginning, I'll tell you at the end.
He just mind his own business and hears, oh, what's that?
And he is dead. So his grandson had indeed killed him. Now, gentlemen, victim or villain? The struggle to escape from the sexual pursuit is one of the most common themes in classical mythology, with women often only being able to escape through metamorphosis or death. And both occur in Medusa's story. And it's no secret that the world we live in is structured by patriarchal rules and upholding the heroism of men and diminishing the value of women. And the lines are definitely not drawn the same. And the 1981 film Clash of the Titans is close to the Greek story, but it's not quite accurate. It's pretty good, pretty close though. And throughout the many myths, Medusa is always used as a weapon by the heroes. She is weaponized by Perseus she's weaponized by Poseidon to shame Athena. She's weaponized by Perseus on his epic journeys, and by Asclepius to either raise people from the dead or to kill them. By Heracles and by Athena, who mounted Medusa's head on her shield. Athena even helped Perseus kill Medusa because the young girl had dared to allow her beauty to be compared to that of Athena. But the story is rarely told of how Medusa came to be Medusa. So which was she, a victim or a villain? There are no stories of Medusa turning people to stone on purpose. No tales of her harassing or killing people. She had the power to kill, but she was not inherently evil. And when she figured out what she was capable of doing, she hid herself away on an island. And the only people that were ever harmed were the people that came to hunt her. Ovid wrote of how Perseus bragged about how he caught her unaware and said, when Medusa was helpless in the power of sleep, and even her serpent hair was in slumber, I struck and took her head sheer from her neck. The name Gorgon translates to mean fierce protector, and the name Medusa means guardian. The name Perseus means to waste, ravage, sack, or destroy, and he's the hero. In a modern retelling of the story of Medusa, writer Nikita Gill, in her book Great Goddesses, frames the curse of Athena more this way, and let me quote this. After finding out that Medusa has been raped by Poseidon, this is how Nikita Gill interprets it. She comes to Medusa and she says, I'll make you a trade, your beauty for stone, your sea-beloved tresses for venom-filled snakes, your innocent doe eyes for frigid gaze. The sea is in the habit of ravishing what does not belong to him, taking without consideration. But sweet girl, I promise you, I will not allow this to be your ruin. You are sacred. You are one of my own, and no cruel chaos will devour you again. Choose terror over maiden. Relinquish your human, and I will turn you into a goddess in your own right, a deity of monsters, a myth that will scare men for all the years and all their seasons. Now, Nikita Gill writes several more books, one called Maidens, Myths, and Monsters, which is also very, very good. And she takes a look at how a female might have told this story. Because as she points out, the stories are always told by the winners.
Mhm.
And they're usually told from the perspective of the hero.
Yep.
And perhaps poor Medusa was only collateral damage in this larger power struggle while the hero took center stage. But Medusa was not the deadly creature that she appeared to be. In my opinion, she was beautiful. And she's laughing. So what is she? A victim or a villain, gentlemen?
I think she's a victim. She didn't have a chance. Everyone, I mean, the people admired her, but all the gods were, well, not all of them, but Athena was jealous of her, and Poseidon wanted to strike at Athena. So he took everything from Medusa in order to hurt Athena. And then Athena turns right around and just pours salt into the wound for someone who dared to be pretty in her temple. You know, so I think she's a victim who has been, like you were saying, the victors always tell the story. So if Athena is the goddess of heroes, it's going to be from the hero's perspective, and I don't know. Poor Medusa.
My opinion is that after that there was a few things in there that I did not know.
Yay! I always try to do that. I have to ask you before you say it. When I told you guys the other night that my goal was to change your opinion of how you thought of Medusa, did I do it?
Yeah. Yeah, because I always just thought she was just this monster that turned people into stone. That lived off by herself.
Did you change it all the way? No, not really. Because I have a toss up. I think, I mean, obviously, hearing that story, I mean, obviously, she's a victim.
Yeah,
she's a victim in her own right. But I think that eventually, does she remain the victim through the rest of her? I mean, obviously, the whole Poseidon thing. Yes, we can all agree that's
Poseidon's
victim.
a dick.
I'm talking about.
So's
Let's get
Athena's
past that point in her story, and moving on to like being in the island and all this kind of stuff. Is she still a victim out there, or is there a point where she just goes, "Well, fuck it, I'll just be wicked then," and gives in? Does she?
She never seeks to harm anyone. The people that died come to the island to hunt her.
But
She
how do
never
we know
leaves
that if
island.
nobody
You
made
know,
it back? If nobody made it
Because
back, how do we know?
She had these wonderful stone gardens of everybody that
Yeah.
came to her island, and stone gardens weren't found anywhere else.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is, like, how do we know that she wasn't vicious in her own right out on that island somehow,
No
some
offense,
way?
you coming
If
at me
nobody
a
came
bow
back.
and arrow and a
Oh well,
sword,
yeah,
I'm gonna turn
duh.
the other way.
But who's to say that she didn't fly off somewhere with her big old wings and go grab somebody up and go, hey, I'm gonna go torture this person, and then said person who wants to come slay her and hunt her down happens upon that. It's like, oh shit, you can't get this back to the city. Turn you to stone, and then continue to kill this person. We don't know because none of those people ever made it back. So she is a victim, but does she stay a victim throughout the entire story? That's my thing. Or does she just give in at some point and just say, I'm evil, and become a villain?
Well, I did leave out one Nikita Gill quote, which I really liked. It said, "Warrior, hold tight to your monster and turn it into your magic." So I think maybe she became a warrior in her own right, having to fight against the people that came to the island, and she used her monstrous looks as her magic to defeat them. So
I mean, overall, my whole thing is like, all in all, at the end of the day, she's a victim. I'm just putting a little bit of a spin there, you know. I mean, because once you lean into something so hard for so long, is there a point where she just goes, fuck it, I'm just going to be a villain and just be evil now at this point?
but if she truly was going to be evil, why would she not allow her children to be born and just turn them to stone?
Well,
she wanted to protect them.
Yeah, that was her. She did not want to harm them.
Her story really reminds me of Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, where they both didn't ask to be made that way. And
Well, I mean, it's like why didn't
reputation.
a serial killer hurt their own family or their own children? Well, I
Mhm.
mean, it's because they love them. Okay, so there, fair point on that. So she didn't harm her own children because she loves and she has a connection with her own children.
Mhm.
Still doesn't make serial killers not a monster just because they
Mhm.
didn't hurt their own children. I mean, they're still a monster.
Oh, she was definitely turned into a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is no question on that. But I think that in that case, that because of this, I just think she was 100% a victim. I think that
Mhm.
she hid herself away. That she didn't. I mean, if she really wanted to be a terror, why not go plop her ass right down in the middle of Seraphos and go, "Listen, you mother effers, here's
Yeah.
what's going to happen now." But she doesn't.
No, she like spirits herself away and hides away from everybody because
Yes,
I don't think she wants to hurt anybody.
I don't think so either. And by the way, for anybody who is going to go, "Oh no, it was Aphrodite who jumped in and changed her hair to snakes," I did find that, but I found more saying that Athena chose to turn her hair to snakes. I did find that little reference that it was Aphrodite's idea. Now, how that bitch got involved, I don't know. But I did find that at some point it was Aphrodite's idea to turn her hair into snakes. But I found that like one place. So, but where
Mhm.
I thought, I'm like, damn, they must have misprinted this because I hadn't seen this anywhere else. Highly recommend the book by Nikita Gill. She has several gods and goddesses and monsters, myths, and monsters, myths. Just look up Nikita Gill. She's fantastic.
Are you
And
saying ma as in Michael or na as in Nancy?
Nikita
Okay.
Like
Gill.
Nikita
Okay.
Koloff.
Like Nikita. Okay. Sorry, that last time you said it, I thought I heard an M.
My
but
apologies.
just
I got
it's
very
okay.
mush-mouthed. I apologize.
It's
I've
okay.
been very much
It's okay.
mush-mouthed all night.
I just wanted to make sure anybody who wanted to go find it and or read it
Yeah.
is able to find and or read it by looking up the right name.
Yes,
For
Nikita
clarification.
Gill, and she takes all of these Greco-Roman stories in mythology, and she tells it from the perspective of the female. She flips the script and tells it. That's why I found that particularly powerful. That when in her modern retelling of it, she actually tells it from Athena's point of view, and she reframes it as that Athena says, "I'm going to make sure nobody ever hurts you again. Let me change you into this, and you will never be bothered."
But
with
it's a whole
anyone.
monkey's paw situation, though. Like, you get your wish, but there's a lot of consequences that come with it.
Right.
Yeah. Like I said, at the end of the day, I think she's 100% victim. I'm in agreement with y'all. She hid herself away. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
And
Of
that's
saying,
okay too. You know, we like
mean,
that.
we don't know
think-
all the stories because none of the people came back. She could have been a monster and a villain in her own rights.
Yeah.
Just saying, there could have been a moment that she was like, hey, you know what? I'm giving in. I'm a bitch. I'm a villain. You know, but no, I think wholeheartedly she was a victim throughout all this. But wow, victim. Did we all just agree on a podcast?
I think we did.
That just means I did my job and I convinced you on my side of the story.
That's really weird because usually it's
Okay, I'm changing
it's
my
a
mind
pair
now.
of there you go. I'm like, I need fighting. I need but what's happening, guys?
I think
Just
because
kidding.
it's Valentine's Day, there's all love in our
So
heart.
much-
and I think that we
so
have
much
love
love.
in our heart for Medusa right now.
For
We feel
Medusa.
sorry for her. Yes. Now we still all hate each other, but you know.
Yep.
Double bird. Well, Blake, anybody have any final thoughts? Do you want to go to final thought, Blake?
Yeah,
I
I got
think-
one. The Roman gods are dicks.
Yeah, that's what to say.
Greek,
Men and the
Greek
Greek.
and Roman.
Greek,
It's
Greek,
well,
Greek,
they're
Greek.
Roman.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just go by different names in Roman, like
Yeah.
like Zeus is Jupiter and Athena is Minerva, and
Yeah.
they're all dicks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll totally
Go ahead,
agree with
Blake.
you on that.
Final thought. I'm sorry.
No, I think Shelly, you told I enjoyed the well-rounded story. You told me a couple things tonight that I didn't know, so I appreciate you telling that. So, but yes, yeah. Thomas wants to know what even is the podcast, or is this podcast without fighting? Yeah.
I know. You know what? There's love in our hearts, Thomas. Leave us
Oh,
alone.
trust me, it's gonna come back next week. Because next week we got some fun stuff coming up. Just stay tuned on that.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of stuff to argue about next week. Brian, do you
Exactly.
have final thoughts? Any
Looks like
final thoughts?
I just feel really bad for Medusa. I mean,
She's a thinky thing.
she's a sneaky snake, you know. And God, just the irony to end up on the shield of Athena at the very end of it all. Just
Her head mounted on the
Yeah,
shield of Athena.
That's awful. There's no
It is awful.
justice for Medusa.
I agree. Let's start that petition.
Hashtag justice for Medusa.
Medusa.
Jesus Christ.
So, Blake, why don't you tell them everything that they need to know?
Oh, well, first and foremost, we got a couple announcements that we kind of
we are
need to
gonna
make
do
and
this.
some shout outs. Yes, we are going to do
All
this.
right,
So,
let's do it.
if y'all'd like to see us in action and see us in front of you doing what we do here on a daily basis, you got a couple of places that you are going to be able to catch us at. May 12th and the 13th, we have already announced this. We'll be speaking in Ballinger, Texas at the West Tex Paracon. They've got a great lineup that's going to be there. Speakers including Ed and Lorraine Warren's nephew, John Zaffis, the Ghost Lab brothers from Discovery Channel, President CEO Natalie Jones, President CEO of Paraflix Paranormal Plus with Natalie Jones. Great lineup. They're having investigations both nights. We will be there speaking on that. Also, July the 14th through the 16th, we will be in Kansas City speaking at Metacon.
Yes.
They're going to have a great lineup there as well. And they're going to have
Zaffis will be there as well.
John Zaffis will be there too. They'll have 40 plus vendors and over 30,000 square feet of shopping, fun, and healing. So make sure that you check that out too. We've got one more that we're waiting on confirmation for.
We have to have confirmation on the dates before we tell you.
Get the announcement for that. And also shout out to Nick Sarlo again with Shadow Hunters. Make sure you check out the information on his Paracon. It's going to be taking place in Broadhead, Wisconsin on April 22nd. If you watched our episode from 2 weeks ago, you remember they're going to have a crap ton of fun planned that day. And great speakers as well with Surviving Michael Myers. I love that.
I want to be there for that. And it's called Spirits in the Spring. And remember, hashtag Sexy Leg Sarlo. Please, y'all, please go find Nick Sarlo and just hashtag Sexy Leg Sarlo everywhere.
And that one is going to be have an investigation at the Broadhead Manor at the end of the night. It's only $10 with the food donation to get in and $20 without.
And I believe it's $20 for the investigation, right?
Yeah.
Go look.
Super cheap. Super cheap. Yeah, we're going to make sure,
no matter what.
We're going to make sure all these links go up for all these Paracons tomorrow on our Facebook page to make sure. We also have tickets available for another 2-night Old Park investigation in October, the 6th through the 7th. We are going to be opening up the jail for that. It's the same price as the main one, but you're getting 2 locations. So those tickets are going to go fast, so make sure you go get them. On top of that, make sure you're following us across the board, all social media channels. Stay up to date on all the exclusive content we have coming. We utilize different channels for different reasons to promote different content. So if you're only following us on one channel, you're only getting a fraction of the content. Find that Linktree link at the in the About Me or bio sections or bottom of the descriptions and click on it and figure out where you want to go, including our Patreon channel and our public events. As well for our Patreon channel, if you join for just $5 a month, for the time being, we're running a promotion that you are entered to win an on-screen appearance with us, as well as a free investigation. You just got to get there. We'll cover the venue costs. You're going to get just under 100 additional Patreon exclusive videos on that. That includes our pre and post broadcast, Paracon speaking events, first dibs on public events, just a shit ton of stuff. And as always, any questions, comments, or stories you'd like to share, y'all can submit those to the evppod@gmail.com. That is THEEVPPOD@gmail.com. I think that is all for my announcement, Shelly.
Like, share, and subscribe. So thank you so much for spending your evening on a date with us. Thank you so much. And I'm Shelly Pruitt, and for my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith, Mr. Ryan Roberts, and our fabulous producer, Miss B, Brittany, back there pushing the buttons and answering your questions. Thank you for joining us this evening. I hope you have a wonderful night. And as always, we will see you next Tuesday.